And once I see we are live, I'll hit the recording, read the bios, and we're off to the races. YouTube's still cooperating. That's nice. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matthew Belair. As today we have two incredible guests for you. Our first guest, Dr. Barre Lando, has over a 40-year career as a bioterrain physician and the formulator for Alfa Vedic. Our second guest, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, is the best-selling author of SuperWellness, Become Your Best Healer. These two are my friends. They're highly intelligent. They've been on the show before, so I'm just excited to dive in because they always make me feel better. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Lando and Dr. Chan. Nice to see you guys.
So awesome to be back. I love every opportunity to chat with you guys.
Yeah, and you've got your daughter there, and it's her birthday, right?
Yeah, it's kind of emotional for me because let's give her to Papa. Bye, honey. 2 years ago at this hour, we were just doing a cord burning ceremony for her because she was born. Yeah, it was this it's hard for me to talk about it without crying because it's been such an intense 2 years. You know, you have this beautiful birth and her first 2 years of life were just nuts. Like, I don't know how to candy coat it. It's been a nuts 2 years. And so her birthday is bringing back all this like nostalgia and memories and so many sensations, so many feelings about, you know, what is the future of this planet? What is her life going to be like growing up? I have so many emotions. So forgive me if I start bursting into tears because it's a very emotional day for me.
Well, you know, I think you bring up an important topic right away because before we got on here, you know, we were just talking about how, you know, I appreciate you both because you see what's going on, you're aware of it, but you don't live in fear, you live in the solutions, but you're also not in the category of everything is hunky-dory, we're just moving into 5D and all we need to do is just, you know, sit there and it's all taken care of. You know, I feel like there's this middle way with all of these ideas, and my daughter's 2 as well, and what craziness, you know, from the start of that, and as a parent, you get concerned. And one of the things I was talking to my friend, actually Rob Edward, who started a podcast, and I think maybe Bear was on there or something. I'm sure his podcast has started off really strong, but we were just talking about the idea that, you know, it's a really challenging time to be alive and it's so uncertain moving forward. And when you have a son or a daughter, it's like, it's such a weakness in a sense. Like, I'm okay with myself. I can be, whatever's going to happen, I can handle it. But now I've got this vulnerability that's like, I'll do anything for this thing. And I just want them to be safe, but I don't want them to have any kind of harm, you know, and it's so vulnerable. And so the future is uncertain for sure. And I guess we could start with that. When we have kids, you know, what do you guys think about moving forward in a positive way? Are you really optimistic? Are you negative? Do you think we're going to come through, or how do you guys feel about that? And I'll go to Dr. Barre first and give Dr. E a break and then let her come in.
Okay. Well, hey, first, thanks, Matt. And wow, Dr. Edith and Matt, it really doesn't get better than this. It's such a fantastically fun way to spend my morning here. You know, I'm 100% optimistic, and just like in the practice of medicine, you realize when you take on somebody who's got some chronic condition and maybe even considered life-threatening, when you start treating, all the crud comes to the surface, and it almost looks like they're getting worse before they get better. But with a little practice, you realize, wow, they really are getting better. And that's what we're seeing on the planet right now. You know, everything's out in the open, and that's a good thing. And some of us, you know, my kids, by the way, are in their 40s. And if you think that you're going to feel any different about your kid when they're in their 40s as you do right now, no, it never changes. They're always going to be your babies. You're always going to worry about them and you know, be there for them in the same way. So it's just parenthood. You know, you just don't know it until you do it. And it's just the best experience of my life, really. So yeah, you know, right now I'm looking at grandkids and I'm seeing all these amazing kids coming through, like Dr. E's there. These kids are different, and you know, they're just hardwired differently. and they're coming in. There's light behind the eyes that I can't believe. The things, my latest grandchild, the boy, is an Aquarian, and just the things already that he's capable of doing. My granddaughters, 9 years old, they're which I'm really proud of. They're already shredding in waves and doing floaters. They look like little Kelly Slaters out there, but they're just very, very wise beyond their years. And I know that this is a time where these incoming souls are the solution, and they are going to be drafting some of the efforts that some of us have done. And, the one thing that we have to realize is that there is an intelligence and a hierarchy of intelligence behind our realm. And especially in the Western world, that has a very special role to play in the planetary evolution. Before they took on certain civilizations and projects on this planet to give all of us incoming souls a chance to, incarnating, a chance to, attain the ascension, which is the ultimate goal of everybody. They would not have taken this project on if they didn't understand that it was already successful from the start. It cannot fail. It's not up to us. The people that are trying to control us have no power. The only power that they have is what we give them. And as soon as we withdraw our life force from them, they will wither on the vine. And we're seeing through their desperate acts right now that that's in fact what we're seeing.
I love that. Dr. E, what do you think?
Well, it's true. It's like the old world is already, the house of cards is already falling. And so we just have to, I think, look at ourselves for how are we addicted to the drama of having to fight the man? Who are we if we don't have to fight anymore? Who are we? We can just focus on building solutions and peace and harmony and a more beautiful world, as our friend Charles always says. Who are we if we don't engage with that kind of drama anymore? To be honest, I was going for a hike before this call, and I bursted into tears because often when you're in nature, all these things start downloading or uploading or whatever, and sometimes you're just moved to tears, and also we had a lot of rain and cloudy days, and the sun came out. It was very emotional for me to see the beauty of nature and the sunshine rising up, and there's this feeling of, I think some of us have to be burnt out from the fighting and the anger and the divisiveness. And then when you burn out, you realize, hey, that's not even sustainable. I can't keep living like that. And after the burnout, you drop into a state of surrender, and so much beauty and abundance and goodness starts rising up when you stop fighting the old and focus on your attention on this much more beautiful new reality that we're stepping into. The thing is, though, back to our friend Charles, he always talked about this transition from the old consciousness of separation into the new consciousness of interbeing. I love this term, interbeing. This understanding of our unity, is deeper than interconnectedness. And for some reason, I'm sure, I don't know that he meant it like that when he describes so beautifully and poetically this transition of old paradigm to new paradigm. Somehow in my mind, it conjures up this smooth and gradual transition from the old world to the new. And it's so, now that we're in it, it's so not smooth. I realize instead of this smooth transition, it's we are simultaneously hospicing the death of the old, and we're midwifing the birth of the new at the same time. And death and birth are both inherently very messy, but also both so beautiful, right? If you can stay in your center and witness all of it, it's so beautiful, and it stirs up so much depth and richness, and a lot of emotions come up, right? So I think I'd like to recommend that we all just be gentle with ourselves, because it's a lot that we're going through right now.
Well, I think
Dr. Ree, I think you're right over the target. Sorry, Matt, just a quick comment. When you say about what is life without trauma, from day one, we're programmed to deal with problems. Our entire education is about dealing with problems. So what if you wake up one day and there's no problems? What do you do with yourself? I mean, that's a complete consciousness shift there. And I'm glad you brought that up. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh no, that's okay. Always jump in. I prefer listening to you than my own self-talk. Either of you. Well, I think the analogy of childbirth, although obviously I'm a man, I cannot give birth to a child, even though it's so woke these days. Apparently, I think that's controversial to say in the crazy world we live in. But I've gone through that, and also sickness. It shows us like transformation. Childbirth is not an easy, pleasant process, as I've observed, or maybe some people have had that. But for the most part, there's a lot of challenge. 9 months of getting pregnant. Yeah, Dr. E was on the show, and she's like, I'm super pregnant right now. She's walking around, and so it's a very challenging process, but it's a beautiful process. And on the other side of it, it's the greatest gift you could ever imagine. It's even beyond what you could think. And you guys have multiple kids, so I could only imagine the gift of one, and then the next one, it's the same thing. It's like, it's even better and more beautiful and magical and profound than you could even imagine, even when you knew kind of what was coming. And so I hope that that's the way we're trending. And if I look at kind of this, it's like this AI artificial Luciferian system that it just wants to draw in your attention, right? But when we go to nature and what's natural and harmonic, it feels good, right? But it doesn't mean that there aren't these other forces out there. And when I play it all out, and both of us kind of know what the agenda is, where there's certain people want to architect an agenda and they really promote it and use all these screens available to say this is what's happening. But you go to the top of a mountain or into the forest, you're not hearing any of those screens. If you don't own a TV, you would still have no idea any of this is happening, and you would have been in peace for 2 years, right? All the tribes, all these different places, or even some of the communities that don't use TV, they probably won't even be aware of it. And so if I play it all out, it doesn't make any sense that these new children are here to suffer. It doesn't make any sense that we have these new kids coming in to live a life of suffering. That's kind of like a deep fear I have. And Dr. You talked a little bit about grief, and I feel like that's something that's going on for people who are aware of what's happening. They see a grief of people who are a bit lost, for the society falling and all the pain and the things that we're witnessing and this divide, and wanting to offer the truth. But a lot of people, they don't want that. They don't want to let go of this reality that they're in. And so, there's a lot of different ways we can go with this, but do you guys want to comment on that or take it from there?
Well, I'd say, one of the greatest harmonic influences that's happening right now is that they're trying to discourage good people from having kids, because they understand that this new wave of souls incarnating are the solution. And, when you look at, you threw out the term Luciferian, Luciferian, is actually an incarnation, in Asia. And it's really sort of set the inclination for Asian cultures to seek out of body, more spiritual, otherworldly experiences. And there's great value to that, of course, but, we need to ground things in, because we're here, needing to create our own world. It's not just about trying to be somewhere else. And so that was Luciferian. It's not a guy with devils or, horns or anything. And then, of course, the second incarnation was the Christ consciousness, and it is a consciousness. And then the third yet to be incarnated, so we're told if you travel in anthroposophical schools and everything, is Armon, who's really in the process of, achieving that right now. And of course, that is a destroyer. In Chinese medicine, we call that the co-cycle. It's just pure destruction. And of course, some people have gotten on board wholesale with that, because they want to see nothing but death, destruction, and ugliness, and of course them in total control. The Christ consciousness is right in between the two. It's not trying to be somewhere else. It's about manifesting, but not in the overly, AI kind of form that they're trying to take us into, the total mechanistic science and medicine that is now destroying the world. It's the Christ consciousness, which is right in between the two. And these incarnating souls are all about that. And so it's really, really important, I think, to really not choose any camp, and, try to just go off and find a guru and escape somewhere. I'm out in the backwoods, but I'm not here because I'm trying to escape. It's just where I'm supposed to be. If I was supposed to be in the city somewhere, God forbid, I'd be there. But, it's about finding your place, and it's about really finding the middle way, and of course, Matt, I know you have a background in the martial arts, and I have too, and it's all about finding that middle way. It's about, being tapped in, behind the veil, but also being here and now, and with the Christ consciousness, manifesting the beauty that was the intention from the very start. And, the creator did not create all the stuff that, happened here. That was our own free will experimentation. And I think a lot of us have learned better from it.
As I listen to you talk, Bear, I get a geometry light show. It's like I listen to you talk all day because I don't know if it's synesthesia or whatever term, or just being a multidimensional human. It's just like see geometries and colors and shapes, and it's like it's magnificent. It's like this beautiful art show. But as you're talking, what it brought up for me is that so many of us, our lives are backed into a corner where it forces you to see where you've been out of balance in your life. So when you're back in the corner, you realize there's no way out. It's like a cheesy saying, there's no way out but in. But what does that mean? It means actually really finding our center, like head, heart, belly, hands, feet. You lock into your center and you realize, wow, where have I not been in my center in my life? And when you're not here, when you're busy, like out there minding other people's business, externally focused, you're actually not even home, right? So if you're not here, all these different energies and forces, they're like, oh, nobody's here. I'll take that over. So you wonder why your life is kind of a big hot mess, is because you're literally not home within yourself. So energetically, I see everything in terms of energy patterns. And it's like this messy thing where you're out of your body, like out here distracted, like up in other people's business, getting yanked in all these directions. And then some other energy, sometimes it's just like messy energy. Sometimes it's literally entities, right, that start taking over this space. So the work right now is literally come home to ourselves, come back to our center. And when you first come back to your center, come home to yourself, you start to realize, oh shit, like there's all these mixed energies here. I have to purge and detox and do a lot of inner work right now. But the good news is when you're back in your center, in your balance, then there's this saying that people are like, hold the line, right? Right now in the freedom movement, it's like, well, instead of holding the line, maybe we should just hold our center. When you hold your center, the line holds itself, right? Like that you actually hold your center and you have an energy field that is centered and stable, and it can't be penetrated. I'm preaching to the choir with like athletes and martial arts people, but this is energetically so important right now. And then what happens if people try to be all up in your business? Because you're holding your center, there's no way for that energy to penetrate. And then the people go, oh, shoot, I can't be all up in your business. They're not responding. I guess I'll go elsewhere and vampire somebody else's energy, or I better come back to my center. See, through the law of resonance, like you're in your center, you walk into a space, it just kind of like invites everybody to click back into their center. And then imagine a world where everybody's minding their own business, like literally and energetically. What a much more healthy world we'd have. And then this whole thing about like unity, people are so confused out there about what unity means. It doesn't mean one size fit allness or sameness or like, like these blanket rules that are totally absurd. It literally means everybody totally sovereign, centered within their being. And then when you all come together in this state, this magical higher win-win spontaneous divine order just kind of like bubbles out of it. And it's this like beautiful magical thing that occurs if, first of all, if each person would mind their own business, basically, like focus on their inner work, come back to their center, mind their own business, both figuratively and also like energetically, like do your Qigong practice and learn how to be in your center.
Yeah, Doctor. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important, the idea of conserving your energy, right? Because if we're looking at the way the world works and all these distractions, right? And so like you could give it to television or you can give it to anger or whatever. It's always an external thing that you can choose to participate in, right? And now it's just, I think the test for it is a higher level test, not to get drawn into it and give all your energy away. You know, again, the martial arts analogies always make sense for me, but the more angry you are in a fight, right, you're going to actually lose energy, but you remain calm and you remain focused, and you can always find a solution to exit it, right? If one of my friends told me this thing, he goes, I can run faster scared than you can mad. And that's a great, you know, martial arts tool. And I was just thinking that if I taught kids, I was like, what's the best way to win a fight? And they'd say all these different things. I was like, sprint as fast as you can in the opposite direction, right? You're not going to, you're probably going to outrun them and you'll probably be okay. And so it's like thinking about what's going on in a little bit of a different way from being at center. And part of that has to be the understanding or perspective that the creation has this is happening for a reason, right? We don't get to decide worldwide, world changing things. There is a creator, there's a higher intelligence, there's stuff beyond what we can control. And that's kind of challenging for some people, including myself. And the other one is that I came to recently is I don't have to save anyone. And so like, it's not my responsibility to save anyone, but I want to participate. And so that's what with you guys, I'd be curious your solution of seeing, okay, there are issues, there is real harm. And that was always kind of one of my just big questions is like, we have starvation. How come it's not solved? Right. And I'm really looking at it and stressing about it, and human trafficking, looking at it and stressing about it and trying to participate. I haven't been able to find the button or make a big dent in it. And so I almost have to surrender to this really ugly part of humanity and existence. And I don't really like that. And I feel like there's all these other kind of harms going on, but it's all dissipating my energy. So what can I do for my gift? And what I kind of come to in my own conclusion was I got to figure out who and what I am and what I can offer and give back and do my best at that. Right. You know, Dr. Bear's an amazing doctor, has helped a lot of people, and as well you. And it's funny when you're talking about geometry and stuff, you have like a Harvard degree in mathematics or something, right? You do like, you know, so you guys are both really logical and highly intelligent in that form of the Western world, but also have really gotten into the energetics and the spirituality side, and we need both. And that's why you guys can see the difference between scientism and truth, because you're adding both. It's not I know everything and this is the final answer. It's a continuous exploration of the truth and of a higher truth. And I'd be curious your thoughts on that rant, and just how do we, you know, when people like want to participate, they might have to let go of a certain thing to move towards a new reality. Some people are getting fired from jobs in really challenging situations. It's very stressful. So we want to participate in a solution, and they might not know where to start. So I'd love for Bear to comment, or Dr. E, if you want to take it.
Okay, I'll take a stab. You know, Dr. Edith, you and I both gravitated toward the biological sciences and actually became practitioners, and I think there's a good reason for that. And Matt, to answer your question, you know, I think we are the solution here. You know, just like in a body that has symptoms or diagnosed with a disease, what you learn as a practitioner, well, some of us, is that disease is actually the body's attempt to heal itself and alert us to, you know, what we need to put right. So, you know, the thing that's really been hidden is, you know, the fact that there's much more to us than meets the eye, and our physical bodies are just, you know, an endpoint condensation, you know, that appears here in this realm, but, you know, the much greater part of ourselves is elsewhere. And Dr. Edith, you and I have more than dabbled in, you know, let's just say the mechanics behind the scenes that make biology work in the first place. And, you know, as far as doctors are concerned, unfortunately, most of them have been seduced into this mechanistic, model of disease and health and microbes and things. And you realize that not only is that nonsense, but it's absolutely counterproductive and actually the source of all of our ills in the first place. So our bodies are really needing to catch up with spirit, because spirit is perfect in the first place. And that's who we really are at that level. And, it's not a matter of going, like when I was in sports, it was all about working out every day and eating, all the things we were talking about before the show. And you kind of become overly body conscious, and at the expense of your spiritual life. And that's, that's one extreme. But our bodies are more important than we realize, because if we can't, fulfill that as above, so below, axiom, then, we really can't manifest spirit. And the body does not have disease, it has deficiencies. And, just like anybody out in the trades, if you're a plumber, a contractor, if you want to fix or build something, you have to have the materials that are necessary for what you're trying to build. The cells of our body are the same thing. And there are basic elements that have been right in front of our face all this time. It's been talked about in the Bible, which talks about, all these things verbatim, as far as, the Masonics, who we think are, all evil and everything. Well, the original Masonics were actually about rebuilding the temple, which was the physical body. And of course, all these occulted truths have become infiltrated and inverted and weaponized against us. But when we understand that all we have to do is have these certain elements available in our bloodstream, and then the cells have all the building materials, then they can resonate on all 12 cylinders. And I know, Edith, you've learned through biogeometry, there's 12 spectrums there. Well, that relates to the constellations that revolve around the earth. It relates to every facet of our being, and the 12 organ systems, and the 12 ganglia and the solar plexus that originate in Aries, which is the optic thalamus, up here. And when you understand all these allegorical teachings, if you understand what's right above our heads, if you go out at nighttime and look at the sky, all of those resonant fields translate into a balance of these all 12 of these spectrums within all of life, as above, so below. And then, and only then, will our body be able to manifest spirit. Not until then will we be able to achieve the ability to communicate without words and be telepathic, and to just travel at will beyond both sides of the veil. And, those are the simple truths that I know some of us are trying to get out right now. And of course, that is also why the conventional narrative is trying to keep us in this paradigm of, disease and, the latest invisible, terrorists and all that kind of thing. So it's really, really a simple matter, but it goes back to the individual person. Each one of us has to make a free will decision. And right now, we're all here to make a very critical decision. Which way are we going to go? There's no more riding the fence. And if you choose to move on where the larger cycles are taking us, whether you like it or not, if you want to go along for a wonderful ride, then we have to get our act together. We have to take care of our bodies. We have to realize the simplicity and the availability of all the elements that we need to manifest spirit here on earth. And then, just like you say, Dr. Edith, all of us souls, and we're an example of it right now, will find each other. And we're grouping together. We have people showing up here on the land. Little communities are just self-evolving. And, the wagons are circling, and we're not even trying. It's just happening. People in Australia are just organically getting together and saying, hey, let's not pay our taxes. See how you like that one. We have all the solutions. We have all the power. And, I'm rambling a bit here, but I think that's, the solutions are here. Matt, you're doing it. Dr. Edith, you're doing it. We're all doing our little part. And we just wake up in the morning. We know what to do. We don't even have to plan anything, and we're finding each other.
Yeah. I think I want to encourage everybody listening to take a deep breath and just recognize that that agenda is self-destructive, because this inherently anti-life. You know, I don't know if you guys know about the Dr. David Hawkins consciousness scale. It goes from 0 to 1,000, right? Sub 200, he calls it force. Above 200, he calls it power. So at the levels, I can't remember the whole thing. I don't have it memorized, but it's like apathy and shame and guilt. These levels, these coercive agendas out there are vibing at these levels of like 20 to 50 on that scale. Many of us in this community, we're vibing at like a 500 plus level, right? Yes, thank you.
It's been coming up often lately.
Yeah, nice job. Okay, so 20 is shame, 30 is guilt, 50 is apathy, and so on. So a lot of people think that there's a lot of fear out there, but actually these coercive agendas is lower than fear. It's so weak, it's just crazy weak. It's at the level of shame and guilt and coercion, like that, all of that, you know, happens at the 20 to 50 level. It's not even at 100. Those of us that are at the level of love and peace and joy, we have to remember that one person who is living and radiating the energy of 500 balances out 750,000 of the people out there who are living in a sub 200 level. So I want to encourage everybody to stand up nice and tall and just feel yourself as 750,000 of those other people, and don't allow them to trick you into thinking that you are like, you know, in terms of like democracy, they're like every vote counts the same. But energetically, every being is not the same. Those of you that have a more expansive consciousness, your just being on the planet right now changes the trajectory of the human story in a very powerful way. And we need to just remember that about ourselves.
I love
and
that,
that's
Dr.
a perfect definition of critical mass. And we're about right there, almost closer than we could believe.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think of like whether it's the cosmic mind or nature or the higher intelligence or God or the creator, right? If you go against nature, it's only going to be temporary, right? You could build a house on sand and it'll go away. Like if you're not in harmony and resonance with nature, you're going to lose. And this whole agenda, it's number one thing when you bring up the consciousness map is fear. And when you're afraid, you're not being able to access these higher levels. And that's what we need to get beyond. And one of the other themes is this idea of death, right? We think we're going to die, but we're infinite beings. And so if we understand that, we will go on. We're not going to be persuaded or shamed or guilted into doing something that's harmful to ourselves or other people because we're afraid that our body is going to die, because we know that we're more than that. And, you know, if God breathed life into man, we have that spirit within us, and that spirit is the higher intelligence. But I do think also that we have to live in this mystery to make the free will choice toward life, toward creation, towards goodness and morality, so that when we get to that other side, everybody will have paid the due. Right? You know for sure that there's so many people in this, spirituality and new agey stuff has become very popular. And a lot of people, I use the analogy of, they're white belts, which is great that they're in the game, but they're putting on a black belt. You know what I mean? They don't have that humility of just being honest and authentic with where they are, because all the triple black belts and the highest level masters I know are still lifelong learners, right? You and Bear are very highly intelligent with a lot of years of success and learning, and you're still yearning for more. You realize that it's not even, there's no chance of knowing everything. And you might learn something tomorrow that changes your whole worldview. And you guys would both sit there and take it, be like, oh, it was like 1 second of grief of like, oh man, I was so wrong, to like, thank you. Now I have this new higher truth, because that's where I'm aiming. That's where I'm intending. And that's what I, want to do, where I want to bring my being. And I think about also like cymatics, when you look at the resonance scales, and it'll be beautiful, perfect geometry. And then there's a dissonance as it goes up to the higher octave. And so once you get to that higher octave, it's more complex, more beautiful, more interconnected. And maybe that's what we're experiencing right now, is this dissonance before we make the choice, for those of us who want to get to that higher scale. And the more of us that can, it's kind of, and again, martial arts or war is a great tactic, because if you go into that scenario, it's very frightening, is very fearful, and you could definitely die. You're putting yourself right in harm's way. But you want to be beside the person who is calm, who's cool, who's collected, who is put together, even though it is dangerous, and life can be mysterious and dangerous. but we are protected to a degree. And if there's something going to happen to us, might get into a car accident, we might, there's something that we have to give to creation, because our life will pass, but there's this higher intelligence here. And for me in my life, I've had multiple near-death experiences. And it makes me believe that I'll leave when I'm supposed to. Doesn't mean I'll put myself in unnecessarily harm's way by being an idiot. It means that if life, we're gonna, call my number, that's it. And so if we live in that way, knowing that we're protected, and our goal is to, calm the chaos, understand that it's an uncertain world, it's frightening, but there are higher forces at work, and we can choose to try to align with those rather than resist them. And the last analogy I'll share was when Dr. Bear was talking about coming to resonance, or the middle way. I remember being at Burning Man, and some guy, he is going up, and his brother was getting married, and he was the best man. And he goes, I've always had a lot of respect for my brother. And one day he came home, but one day he did something that really impressed me and blew my mind. He was really stressed about work, and he's an entrepreneur. And he goes, you know what? I'm never going to be stressed out ever again. And he goes, that was 2 or 3 years ago, and I've never seen him stress out once since. And so this individual dropped stress permanent. I don't know if it's continued on, but I was like, that's amazing. So is it possible? Like, if we woke up and there was no enemy, kind of like as Bear was saying, there was no conflict, and you just literally surrendered to whatever it was. I think that's a high level of mastery, which I'm more of a kicker and screamer and hold on to the, and fight reality. But I'm trying to move towards, what's right and what's true and what's more coherent.
Yeah, well, we're talking about these emotions in, higher and lower octaves. And what we have to realize is we're all a work in progress. And it's not a matter of beating yourself up if you're in a particular emotional state. You just realize those are different tonal fields existing in different octaves. So we're here to learn, just like a pipe organ, how to, you manipulate the foot pedals and build up the pressure and just go up and down the octaves at will. And when you look at that, Dr. Edith, the chart that you're referring to there, you look down at, depression and all that kind of yucky gray stuff. That's inertia. So if you kind of move up a little bit, pretty soon you hit anger. And, being pissed off is actually a good thing because now that energy is moving. You don't want to be down here in inertia. And that's where most people are right now. And a lot of the truth that all of us have been sharing out there, when some people find out about the truth, find out that we've been actually played, and duped from day one in our life, you get a little bit ticked off about it, but that's a good thing. Of course, if you stay in that anger range, then, that's going to translate into other things in your life, and including your body's inflammation and things that, that's not a good idea too. So you want to keep moving up the scale, and, you got to go through some of these emotions that we might deem as negative before you get to the next one. So there's really no bad place to be. You just don't want to be stuck anywhere.
Thank you for that. My boy, some of the audience might have heard this story. He came to me before he was incarnated. We weren't planning to have children, and he started showing up in my dreams and meditations and showing visions of this transition that is happening now, that there's a wave of spirit babies that are all coming to the planet to blanket the earth with a new frequency, with a new light, with a new state of being. And he convinced me that they have to just come and show us a new way. They can't just, like telepathically communicate it. They have to physically be here to embody a new state of being. And so this was back in 2013. Now he's about to turn 7 in a couple of weeks. And the last few weeks, he's been really coming through with a lot more new information about all the things he remembers from before he incarnated on planet Earth. And so I could go on and on about all the different things that he's been sharing. At nighttime, instead of bedtime stories, we talk about, he goes, Mama, let's talk about space. Before I came into your belly, this and that and that. And so one of the things he often comes back to is when you're a space baby, you just feel peace and happy and joy all the time. And he says one of the reasons that we're so excited to jump into mama's belly and come to planet Earth is that we can see, he says, we look on these screens and we can see everybody. We can zoom in and see everybody's lives. That's how you choose your future mamas and babas. And he said, you're the best mama for me. My favorite one, I looked and looked and looked. And I said, that one, that one, that one, that's the one. And then these like caretakers, they blow a wind and helps you to jump into your mama's dream and communicate with them. And he says things like, on planet Earth, people are confused about how you make a baby. They think the mama and baba just kick their peepees together and make a baby. No, that's not how it works. First, you have to have a space baby come jump into your dreams. The space baby has to pick you first. That's how it works. And then after the space baby picks you, it makes the mama and baba want to kick their peepees together. And then all three of you together, that's how you make an earth baby. People are really confused. They don't realize the most important part is the space baby has to pick you first. So he's saying that the space baby wants to come to planet Earth because we can see on these screens that people get sad, they get lonely, they get angry, they get cranky, they get tired. They have all these experiences. We can see it, but we have no idea what that's like. So we want to jump into the earth and feel what that feels like because it seems really interesting. And I'm like, honey, why did you pick now to come to planet Earth? It's so crazy here with the germ and everything. And he was like, Mama, I just wanted to be with you. It just seemed like fun to be with you, So, yeah. So we have a lot of conversations about, are you worried? Are you, different things. And he's so not worried. He's had dreams about different things like, I had a dream that there was no food on the shelves at Whole Foods. I'm like, and then what? And he's like, well, we just ate from our garden and it was fine. I was happy. We were all healthy. It was no problem, So it's just so nice that these little beings are here to bring this kind of stability and optimism and wisdom that everything is going to be okay.
Well, I love that. And I've never heard the term of space baby before. And it also makes sense from a soul level, right? I think that, I know that I have a soul, there's that voice or that connection or that something, even when I was on Everest and had the near-death experience, there was like this separate, it was me, but it was just very odd. And other experiences where I know you guys have had them as well, where you kind of touch that infinity or God or creation and you're a part of that. And you also get this free will while you're down here. And so if there's a child that's going to come into the mix, it's always the greatest gift, and they're coming and they're choosing the parents and they're choosing this creation. So when I play it all out, like I said before, I can't see that it would just be for these children to suffer. That doesn't make any sense to me unless we were in the most horrendous space you could possibly imagine. And it seems like the tool of these controllers is fear, right? That wants to limit our expression of life, of being alive, of being vibrant, of being connected, being joyous. Because when you are fearless and when you are in coherence, I think it's a law of resonance, right? The higher, if there's two resonant fields, the lower one's going to be absorbed into the higher one. And so if they create this mass psychosis of fear, it's going to be harder to break out. But once people start breaking out, they see it's more coherent. They desire that, they want that. And that's why it's so important for each of us to do that. And the kids are a lot of the time that example, right? And so it's also fostering that strength as parents and as people to say, what's the best version of me that I can be, so that this child is seeing that version. They don't see me, lost in all of this nonsense. They see me being the strongest individual that I can, so I can, pass it on with them. And if we are an evolutionary species, and there are some interesting things going on behind the scenes with higher intelligence or whatever theories are out there, which there are many, it would make sense that these kids are going to have another opportunity. And some of them, we're now noticing there's a huge massive shift into homeschooling, because on the predator side, we're becoming aware that that is an indoctrination system, that you don't want your kids anywhere near that thing, right? And you know, and so the solution side, now there's more homeschooling. It's not completely sorted out yet, but a lot of people are sorting it out, and they do have it sorted, and then that knowledge gets passed on because people are going to start to see the examples of it. How did you get that way? Bear was talking before, we were talking about just fitness, and Dr. E was an athlete too. When you're an athlete, you wonder, how did you perform at that high level, right? And when you're new into it, you're like, holy smokes, it's just so incredible. How in the world did you get to that level of ability? It's so amazing. Can I learn from you? And now that track is paved, and you have somebody that you know has done it. And that's what I think we have this opportunity to do. And I also thought about the idea, if we're created by the creator, and we have love for our children, well, the creator would have that same amount of love. And if we were the commanders of our towns and it had the biggest disaster, you would send your best people there. You'd send their best people there to create remedy. And what a shit show we're in. You know what I mean? To be like, oh dear, it's like, just breathe, and that's, if you're a high level military, that you just go into a shit show and you have to have that calm, and I'm going to go help this person because that's what I came here to do. I came here to help. I came here to be a part of the solution. And I feel like if we're aware of what's going on, we're a part of that solution. And we might be in a little bit of a holding pattern, which is challenging, but I do feel like this higher intelligence does have, life will always win. That, like you said, the evil has the seeds of destruction sown within it. I can't remember who had that quote, but it does make sense. And it's not powerful, just like that Hawkins scale of consciousness. I use the example of, if you're going to, like, I'm good at martial arts and I'm stronger than, let's say a little tiny girl who's like 5'2" and has never trained martial arts. But if I go into her home and attack her, she's going to have a good defense because she's going to be fighting for her life. I can piss off at any point. There's no reason for me to be there harming her. So she's going to fight for her life. And this energy is going to come out and do all kinds of crazy shit. And, she'll probably do okay. And that's that will of what's right and what's true. We know what we stand for, and we will fight for that. And we will do what's necessary to stand and build what's right. And once it's there, we have no qualms. As long as you don't come here and try to mess with me, we're fine. And you're also invited. If you quit being a butt, you're welcome to come on in, and we would love to have you. Just knock it off, right? And then all of a sudden, that higher resonance, it'll be like a tipping of a scale, because people are just getting shooken with their dissonance. And I feel like also the last point I'll make is that this world, there's a lot of dissonance that people were not facing. It has to come right to their door to care about something else. And so this is a kind of a wake-up call for humanity, for all these things that could use correction. And we need to start creating these new systems that are coherent with the principles of life and nature and good, and whatever the case is, and then model those and share those with other people. So that's my rant. Bear, do you want to chime in, or Dr. E, either way?
Yeah, I don't know where to jump in on that one, but everything you're saying is so right on. And we have to understand that the would-be controllers actually have, and there's very few of them, by the way. Of course, they have a lot of useful idiots on the ground that go along with it because I'm just doing my job, that kind of thing. But they really don't, as I said before, they don't have the power, and they're coming from a place of fear. They have more fear than all the billions of the rest of us put together. And that fear is going to, already is their downfall. And, we talk about all these special abilities that people could have. We say, well, why aren't we telepathic, or we're, just, in awe of somebody that shows some abilities, like the ability to be telepathic. And all this stuff is very simple. If you look at the nexus between, these lower emotions and the seemingly inability, for instance, to be empathic, you just have this, like, look at shame and being telepathic. Well, all of us who have been programmed within this system to be afraid, and also to just be judgmental, out of just sheer hatred, because hatred is really the root of everything here. And so we're all walking around with these judgments of each other and of things. And because of that, the shame factors, well, we don't want to, somebody we're talking to be able to get inside our head and see what we're really thinking about. And, so the roots of all that really have to be remedied, because once we lose the hatred, then that's gonna, completely abate any of the judgments and projections that we all do every day. That's going to cut the shame right at its roots. And now all of a sudden, you really don't care if somebody climbs into your head or not. And that is the definition of telepathy. It's when we no longer have anything to hide. We are not telepathic as a species because we're all hiding ourselves. We've all got guards up. So, I think it's just helpful. What I'm trying to say is some of these special abilities that we don't understand how they work, it's much more simpler than that. It's just about losing all our stuff, just being out in the open, nothing to hide. The people that are trying to control us have the most to hide, obviously, and we can just go about our business and be operating in a different realm. We don't need their freaking internet. We don't need cell phones. We don't need anything. Matt, if I want to get a hold of you, I'm just going to get you through the airwaves. And in fact, with my wife and myself in our life, we have experience of that every single day. We know who's on the phone before they even pick it up and ring our side. It's just, and I know you guys have those kinds of experiences also. And the people that we travel with, we're just comparing notes. We're saying, wow, that's like becoming the norm now. And so technology, that is entrapping many people, number one, couldn't even exist unless it existed within nature and within ourselves first. It would be impossible. There's nothing new under the sun. And then the next thing is technologies rightfully used are to show that aspect and the technological aspect of what we already are. So we get the bright idea and just say, hey, I can throw this freaking phone away and just go directly. So that's where we're headed. That's what technology is supposed to be teaching us. But, they're, again, have weaponized it to entrap us to think that we're in this mechanistic world that is somehow improving with technology. And that's what also Steiner talked about. He said, in this day and age, that would be the ultimate trap, is our technology, our electronics. That's what would make us sick. And it's happening. We're witnessing that.
As I was listening to you talk there, I was reminded back in 2013 when I went away to darkroom retreat and came back to San Francisco, I became much more telepathic and much more expansive, much more able to tune into subtle energetics. And to be honest, be careful what you wish for. It was too much for me. I had to move out of the city. I could sense, see, feel energies at such a heightened level. Honestly, it wasn't that fun, because I could hear all the grumpy, stressful thoughts of all of my neighbors. And it's just like, it took years to learn how to turn that up and turn that back down. That's quite a skill, And so when humanity has cleaned up its thought fields so that we can tune in and there's not like lots of static and lots of mixed energies and stressful thoughts all over the field, then we will naturally want to be tuned in more. Right now, it's like sometimes so messy that it's almost traumatic to be that tuned in, right? So there's an individual state of expansion, and then there's a collective state of doing our inner work and cleaning everything up before we can reach that state as a collective, I feel.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's interesting if people are thinking about, telepathic abilities. Most people wake up and they just think on a hamster loop all day. They say estimated 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are repeated and most of them are negative. And so if we're able to quiet our mind to go into this inner process, we're going to develop and experience things that most people don't, because most people are locked in that version of thinking. And as you spoke, Doctor, you maybe just think about the idea of, again, coming back to myself, because every time you go with the external material or a they, people should do this, people should know better, society should wake up, things should be different. All of that's outside of your control. The only thing that you can do is maintain your own coherence and connection within the chaos. And if that chaos comes in and ends me at that point, that's the best I could have done, at that point. And that was up to the creator anyway. But usually it's just a thought form of something negative that can happen. So how do I, go about peacefully the entire scale? Is that possible? Am I able to do that? And when I look at what's going on the planet, it's how do you, I'm curious, I want to ask you guys, like, how do we make peace with like this perceived maybe evil or this challenge or this dissonance, right? Or the harm. Like, I feel like, again, one of the things Dr. Ebro is like this grief. A friend of mine, Rob Edward, came over again. Shout out Rob and his awesome podcast for taking the plunge. We met about a year ago, and he's like, I'm trying to move towards, my purpose, and I'm not sure what it is. And all I kind of shared, and what I shared to most people, is just keep following the impulses of who you are, right? Start figuring out who you are and how you want to contribute. And then, over time, it becomes a little bit clear, and we just make our own little impact where we are, right? Just we keep following that thing. But over time, it's going to be a great impact over a year, over 2 years, over 10 years. And we develop and become who we want to be. And it's in alignment with who we are and with the greater good within everything else. And I feel like that's the challenge that we have, is to get into coherence with all of this challenge. And to be a person who's aware of what's going on, you're going to be experiencing grief, loss of friendships. I've heard crazy stuff with families about Thanksgiving and Christmas and the whole divide. Well, if you're aware and you can't, it's like, well, why would you do that? It's like, let us hang out. It's hard because you're grieving, right? And we're aware of that. So that's a part of this process, is grief. And so we have to handle that in an adult way. And I remember having Tom Campbell on, one of the leaders in simulation theory, and he said, this is, moving from adolescence into adulthood. We have to have accountability. And if your son or daughter doesn't want to come to dinner and they're being all cranky, and like my daughter will let me sit on the couch with her half the time. She's like, I was like, where do you want me to sit, on the floor? She goes, yeah, so I got to sit on the floor, or I get yelled at. I'm not going to get mad at her for that, although I do get grumpy because I want to cuddle. This is what's happening in these cases, these really hard, challenging with friends, with family, just them kind of disowning you and like, oh my goodness, because we want to stay connected to the truth, right? And we want to find these solutions, but that does mean we're going to get consequences too along the way. And so we have to stay with the congruence, and also try to figure out what we're going to do to support. And it's a very challenging spot, I feel, for most people. I wonder if you can kind of speak to that.
Lately I've been on a little, I've, to be honest, gotten burnt out from, this is Bear's term of tracking everything with the cootie shot. Bear calls it the cootie shot. I'm burnt out from all of that narrative, so lately the content, I've been studying common law. And then the other thing, the spiritual side, I've been just on a binge of listening to podcasts and stories of people with their near-death experiences. Every once in a while, when I feel like I need a soul realignment, I listen to people's near-death experiences, and it helps me to live my life on a more consistent basis, on a day-to-day level, seeing everything from the eyes of spirit, And so that stirred up so much love and compassion. I know it seems weird to say. I have so much love and compassion for all these people that are blind to what's happening, that are, choosing divisiveness in their families, and just choosing coercion and manipulation and shame and guilt as a way of operating in this world. I feel sadness and compassion and love for people, because I know that when we cross over, we will have that 360-degree life review, and we'll see all the perspectives, and it will all be shown, all be revealed, and we will understand ultimately the consequences of these behaviors in action. So maybe they don't get it now. Eventually, everybody awakens, even if it takes death to do that.
Yeah. I had my wife and myself had an acquaintance. We got to know a little bit at a private dinner with this gentleman. His name was Daniel Brinkley. You might have heard of him. He wrote a book called Saved by the Light, was it, Edith? I think so. Anyway, that was some years ago. Anyway, it just kind of serendipitously happened. We got to know each other. And he talked about his two near-death experiences. He was working kind of some special ops, not so nice stuff for the military. And he describes himself as kind of a Southern boy that was a bully his whole life, and, not a nice person. And then he was struck by lightning, died. And long story short, he was out for several hours. And then on the other side, he describes this whole experience. He had to go through a life review. Now, in that life review, it's not like hell or, people saying you're bad and, and that sort of thing. but he did have to feel every single action and thought that he put out towards other people and the harm it accomplished. And, you know, we think thoughts are harmless and that, oh, that, you know, they don't know what I'm thinking about, but actually that creates harm and suffering to them in some way or another. And he had to feel every bit of that. So at the end of his review, a lot of other cool things happened, but I won't get into the whole story. He came back and he said, you know, once you do your life review and you actually see it from that perspective, he said, not only was it unbelievable on that other side to the point that I just in no way wanted to come back, but he said, you know, you will never even have, you know, a temptation of thinking or projecting even on the thought level towards any other individual unless it's, you know, in the pure love resonance. He said, it's over. It's over. You know, and it just transformed him. And he had a very special life after that. He actually died a second time, came back a second time, and he didn't want to come back again. And he says, you know, in a Southern accent, it's kind of funny. He says, you know, next time I see that tunnel, I'm going to sprint and nobody's going to make me stay there, you know, because he says, you know, you get a glimpse over there. This is really camping out over here. But they made him come back a second time. They said, no, you can't stay because you haven't forgiven yourself yet. And so that's the crux of everything. You know, we are here to not only realize that thoughts are things and they have consequences, but, you know, just to get to that point of realization that, you know, we are God beings and there's no way on earth we should even have an inclination to do, you know, the majority of things we do. When I was in, you know, in my career days, you know, I would, you know, get a lot of people with, you know, so-called terminal illnesses and everything. And I sort of put it into a narrative where, well, think of it as an accounting sheet, you know, at the end of the day, how many of your thoughts are over here, double plus good healing, I'm fine, and versus over here, like, oh, you know, I'm toast and how can I get over this? And, you know, just going down in the dumps. And, you know, overwhelmingly for the majority of people in that situation, you know, it's over here. And it's like, well, if you realize what that creates moment by moment, then why do we just perpetuate something like a disease that could actually, you know, take us out? Not because it's a disease, but we think it is. And, you know, we're going to have to manifest our belief system. So pretty simple stuff. And I think all we're here to do is to just change some bad habits.
Go ahead, Doctor. Yeah, I'd like for you to follow up. I feel like you should.
Well, it's just all this craziness that's happening on the planet right now there's like, if you have the eyes to see it, there's so much opportunity to clean up our inner state of being, clean up our thoughts, clean up our ability to see life with the eyes of an expanded consciousness, to realize, to humble ourselves, to realize that, yeah, we're all here to learn and grow in our perfect way. So as imperfect as things seem out there, it's actually, if you step into your center and just look with this perspective, you can also see so much beauty and perfection that's unfolding right now. It's this paradox. I feel like everything, though, all the most beautiful, potent, timeless truths are full of paradoxes. Like you see the perfect imperfection that's out there, you go deeply within, and then you become extremely expanded. Like everything about what's happening right now on our journey of our soul evolution is just filled with paradoxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bear, when you were talking, the one thing that hit me was the thoughts, you know, and saying thoughts are actual things. And I was caught in that, thinking about the frustration I have with some of the friends and people I know, you know, and realizing, whoop, like I was projecting some crap on them, right? Because I'm so frustrated that, you know, these people that I grew up with, who I, you know, appreciate, it's like, how can they be doing this, you know, and how come they won't even have a conversation with me, you know, and just because it's hurtful, you know. I guess I'm a little bit hurt from it, and I'm sad from it, and I'm grieving because these people are very important to me. And so, but that's also a childish reaction, you know, to, you know, just like, I don't wish harm, but I'm just like, you idiot. So it's like, that's not unconditional love either. And I like what Dr. E said is seeing it through the eyes of spirit, this greater perspective. And that comes down to, again, this surrender to something greater, this higher intelligence. And so I always come back to this question of like, okay, we have this higher intelligence and this life force, and I can only have my one experience, and it is about cleaning up my world. And at the same time, I've always had a trouble, just coming to agreeable terms on why there's so much suffering, why there's so much friggin' harm, why do I have to observe this? It's not like I think what Atlantis would be, or peace. It's like, okay, we murdered this set of people, now these bunch of people are these. What is the deal with all of this evil? What's your perspective on that? One of the things that I've kind of heard that's been a bit helpful is if we didn't have the contrast, we couldn't choose, right? That on the other side, when you see all the characters in the play, right, they were all necessary for your own evolutionary growth. I kind of understand that, and it sounds nice, but it's like that deep acceptance of evil and its necessity is challenging for me. I'm wondering if you guys would speak on that.
I don't want to claim like I have the answer to the entire cosmic puzzle. I so don't. I mean, we're all here to learn and grow and just be part of the mystery of it all. So I don't know, but I can theorize about it. What I hear from my boy so often when we chat about at nighttime, all that, why he came to the planet Earth, he keeps saying that we want to come here to learn what it's like to be all these different things, to play different roles, and to see what it's like to be sad, to be angry, to the full spectrum of the human experience. We came here to live the whole spectrum. And so there are some of us, I'm sure, that chose to live a role as a villain. And I'm grateful that I didn't choose that role in this lifetime, and there's a part of me that is just like, wow, who's more courageous? Maybe Fauci's way more courageous than me, that his soul said, yeah, I'll be like the ultimate villain for this time of intense transformation on the planet, to stir up all the shit so people really have to do their inner work. I'll play that role. And there's a couple named Elena and Alejandro. They do calibrations of different people using that David Hawkins consciousness scale. And according to their measurements, I don't know for sure if it's like 100% accurate, but their measurements show that Fauci vibed at like, I don't know, 20 or 50 or something on that scale, which makes a lot of sense to all of us, but that they also have a way of measuring how the percent that somebody's living into their divine purpose. And according to their measurement, he's living 100% of his divine purpose. So here's a guy that probably on a soul level said, I'm going to play an awesome villain, like total, like award-winning performance. And that's going to stir up intense awakening across the entire planet because of my role. So who do we have gratitude for in this situation, right? Because this intense transformation that's happening had to be poked and prodded. We were too comfortable before. We were going down the wrong track, and something big had to happen. And if it wasn't this cooties narrative, it probably would have been something else, because we're going down a train track that was not sustainable, that was based on a paradigm that just wasn't working for too many people. So if it's not one thing, it was going to be another. Somebody has to come and play the role of the villain to stir this mass awakening process.
Yeah, the pendulum definitely has to swing in both directions. And I agree with everything you say, and not pretending that I know anything either. However, we can point to some evidence that would help us maybe answer your question there. The simple answer, it's our choice. I don't think God creates evil in order to teach good. That's just not within that realm of consciousness. That's our choice. However, certain folks like Wilhelm Reich, Steiner, we could go through the whole list of notables, how they actually evidenced subplanes, planes, and subplanes of reality, and actually were able, with heat sensitive equipment, photography equipment, able to actually photograph different myriads of life forms in all these different planes. Now, on these planes, and the Earth is a stratification of planes. I'm convinced of that because we can measure them and do a lot of other things, including taking pictures. But we are on one plane. That's where it's like a little thread, and this is, the sea. And here we are in this consciousness of materiality. And all around us are other planes of consciousness that are unaware of us, just like we're unaware of them. Some are aware, but with the whole understanding of non-interference, they're benevolent and try to leave breadcrumbs, but cannot interfere with our experience. At the same time, and again, photographic evidence, not conjecture, shows that there are beings on subplanes that are at a lower resonant level than where we're at, but they have an awareness of us, and they also have the ability to interact with us unknowingly to us on the mental plane, and that is the source of mind control. Now, the controllers on the planet that we blame, your Hildebeest and your Trudeaus and all these people that do unspeakable things, they are mind controlled worse than anybody. And it is from these harmonic subplane influences. So the real discussion, I think, is, not what the Clinton Foundation is up to, but who's controlling them. Because when we understand those forces, then not only can we protect ourselves, but we can also play the same game, not trying to go, tit for tat with them directly, but we can make ourselves impervious to the mind control. And about 25-30% of us are not amenable to their mind control. And that's a reason, that you have to go into the level of the soul and who some of us are in the first place. That doesn't mean better or worse. We're just not buying it. But a lot of these other folks are buying it 100%. And the worst of the worst that, we're doing these unspeakable things are the most mind controlled of all of us, put together. And then, it's just the poor, unfortunate souls that are walking around with masks and subjecting their kids to child abuse through the public full system. They're just going along for the ride because they're under mind control as well. So we really need an awareness of how things work. We need the understanding of the anatomy of our realm so that we are not just unwitting victims and actually become control of our own circumstances. And that's why we're playing the game here in the first place.
Ooh, Bear, can you speak to some more of that? That's a juicy topic of what makes somebody immune and what makes somebody easy to mind control. I listened to that amazing episode on your podcast with Kathy O'Brien, and she also was interviewed by Sayer Gio. Beautiful conversations. And that's listening to her speak gave me my heart softened. I felt so much compassion for all those who are mind control, like understanding that it really isn't their fault. Like we can love them. We can give love and compassion and forgiveness because there's something else at play here. Yeah.
What a beautiful soul she is. And just an amazing story, a hair-raising story, if anybody out there knows what she went through. And I won't get into all that. And some of it's pretty darn gnarly, stuff that you don't even like to talk about. But she exposed a lot. Now, interestingly, many years ago, I was in circles where we were putting on events. We got busted here in the States because we were speaking too much truth. All this common law stuff and everything. We were talking about that. We were bringing in people from all fields and we were packing auditoriums. FBI would come in and bust us every time. So we actually ended up moving overseas and doing these overseas things. Now, this brings us maybe to the mid 90s or so, and we're bringing in G. Edward Griffin and Ron Paul and David Icke and Kathy O'Brien and folks like that. So we got to know a little bit about a lot of story going on the planet. And to look at Kathy with her evolution from when she was first rescued from MK Ultra mind control and forced against her will to do unspeakable things. And now to look how her as a perfect example of everything we're talking about, where she has just grown at that level of the soul tremendously, where now she's just a beaming light. So there's somebody who on some level chose this unbelievable experience, not only came out the other side, but used it to her advantage, and not only to her advantage, but to be a light to the entire world. And we see a lot of these brave souls doing that right now. I don't consider Fauci, sorry, I have some personal intense feelings about the man, especially when I heard that he tortured beagles. So anyway, but anyway, you get my point. I don't know if I answered your question or anything, but.
Well, I was going to say, for one of the reasons why I was able to see all this kind of stuff was because I was studying mindset, mind power, and things like that. And hypnosis came up and language patterns. And then I realized when one was being used on me. So, a basics of NLP book there's a documentary called Century of Self by Edward Bernays, the basics of hypnosis, the work of Darren Brown. If you don't think this exists, go watch Darren Brown on YouTube. He hypnotizes people, takes their wallet, does all these experiments, and you start to see, oh, that's interesting. He goes around New York and he pays for things with money, or not with money, obviously that would work, with paper. And he goes and he buys this $5,000 something diamond ring with paper. He buys all these other things with paper, but then he goes to try and buy a hot dog with the paper. And that guy's more aware. And he goes, "Hey, buddy, what's this?" And then he kind of walks away like, "Oh, that didn't work," And so you start to see, it's like, I find it's like jujitsu. If you don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to just do whatever I'd like. I'll break your left arm. I'll break your right arm. I'll choke you. I'm going to do whatever I want. You have no idea what I'm doing. And it works. It's very effective. It's the same thing with hypnosis. And that's why mental nutriments, when they talk about that in Buddhism, is so important, because they're getting you with the programming. They're getting you with the music. They're getting you with repetition. And you start to hear these things. So you start to cut them out. And that's why I feel like this balance is so important of understanding the threat, but not succumbing to fear. When you understand that eating sugar only is going to probably give you a detriment to your health, you can then, sub something out. I remember I thought I was eating healthy at like 24. I was just eating total shit. It's just like not even close, but as I learn more, I could correct. And that's what this opportunity is, to see the things that are maybe dangerous or don't have our best interests at heart. Eat this and you get big and strong. Meanwhile, it's giving you some sort of disease and making you terrible. It's to be able to see past that's important. And originally you're frustrated because why would someone do that, right? And that's the whole healthcare system. People say, "Oh, well, doctors and nurses are good people." Yeah, but did you go back far enough? Did you go back far enough to see where the education and where things started to get askewed, and they took away all naturopathic, homeopathic medicine to bring in pharma? Did you get that far? Because that matters. And yeah, I have doctors and people that are great people, but they need to accept that truth, that they didn't get the whole truth, that there are other things, and to begin exploring those and to allow that truth to reemerge. And Dr. E, when you're talking about the service, Fauci being the villain, and it reminds me of the Book of Raw stuff. And it said that we need the polarity here. And if you're going to graduate, this is their thing. They say, if you're going to graduate to the next level, you need to be above 50% service to other people, or 90% service to self. Like your whole life, you're just the biggest piece of crap ever. And that's kind of like this villain in this opportunity. And like Bear said about the beagles, what a great villain. You know what I mean? Because now the villain is torturing dogs, and you're just like, you're feeling, you get so, it brings up this emotion. And if that's the case in this realm, that it is necessary, and they're serving the role of villain so that we can respond to that. But that's all we can do, because at the end of the day, the creator and what's happening here, that's what that guy does is beyond my control, right? But what I can do, I can shut off the TV. I can get harmonious with myself in creation. I can spend more time in nature. I can make sure that what I do is harmonious to my community, and commit to my growth in myself and toward creator God's spirit in the best way. All that other stuff I can't control. Right. And that's what I learned in human trafficking, was that I could go down this rabbit hole and get to the detail of each abuse and how horrific it was. That's not going to serve me anymore. I have to figure out who I am. So if I'm worried about that, maybe I can empower children in some sort of way, empower them so they have awareness, they're smart, they're connected, and they're going to live their life in a powerful way. So I'm going to commit myself to the solution. And so that was kind of my thoughts, and I'd love to hear any response.
About this whole mind control thing, I haven't gone as deep as you, Matt, but I've heard that from age 0 to 7 is where the overwhelming majority of the programming happens, which is why it's so potent and powerful right now for us to keep our kids away from the indoctrination camps from age 0 to 7. And I feel super blessed that I had a boy that I tried to put him into the best nature-filled preschool with like organic everything. And they were indoor, outdoor gardening, song and dance and kumbaya. And they had the vegan-friendly, paleo-friendly, gluten-free friendly diet and all the good stuff. And still he said, Mama, I don't like it that they make you pee-pee and poo-poo during potty time. I pee-pee and poo-poo when my body says, not when the big guy says. I eat when my body's hungry. I don't want to eat when they say it's snack time. I want to eat when my body says is hungry. And he just kept reiterating that over and over again until in his own, like 4-year-old way, it became clear. It's like, Mama, do not put me into this mind control camp. However harmless and holistic it may seem, is still giving my authority away to some external figure. And that's an assault to my soul. Like in his telepathic way, like he would look me in the eye, these beams that would come out like, don't do that to me. My soul cannot take it. And so now, with everything that's unfolded in the world, I feel so grateful that he woke me up to all of that. Like talk about, he said, we have to come here, this new generation of children, we have to come here to wake you guys up. We have to show you, we have to be in our bodies to show you a new paradigm. And so I'm really seeing what a huge difference when a child from age 0 to 7 is honored to discover who they are, to listen, just start with like listening to their bodies, to have their programming pattern be infused with lots of time in nature, doing gardening, climbing trees and rocks, and just the frequency pattern is dominated by nature's wisdom first. And then I believe that there's so much better embodied. And of course, birth practices have a lot to do with it, not putting them into traumatic medical interventions and so on has a lot to do with it. You see these little ones that grow up in our homeschooling and unschooling communities here. We run around in the forest, the kids have play dates, and you can see energetically, these kids are like solid in their bodies. And so, whereas some other kids, energetically, when you look, they look a little bit like empty shells, right? So if you're an empty shell, it seems to be that you'd be really easy to mind control as an adult, right? But if the first 7 years of your life, you're fully anchored and in your body, I think when you grow up, you're not going to be so easily subject to all the agendas out there.
Yeah, well said. And, I had a very similar experience with our kids. At one time, we explored a Waldorf school. So we went up there, great people. We knew the principal and everything. It was in Maui. And we ended up not doing it because the kids didn't want to go there. So we just kept them at home and, had a wonderful experience. Instead of being in a classroom at a certain time, I was pushing them into waves when they're like 4 years old. And, we all, we honored the phases of life and development that they were at, just like, which is the basic principles of Waldorf training. But we did it, more customized to our kids' needs, because I don't think any kid is exactly like other kids. And when my kids got older, we had, we're able to master all the mathematics and everything way beyond what they were able to do in a regular school. But then, we also did it in a way that was suitable to them when they were ready for it. When one of my kids was 15, every year we said, okay, we're going to have a special project for the year. So my 15-year-old, we're sitting down, okay, what can we do? And we decided we go get our pilot's license together. Another year he decided he wanted to go to Outward Bound and, be out and alone in the wilderness, for an extended time. So we always had these special projects. It was always on the fly, and it worked out beautifully. You made a comment about that kind of percentage of what we're giving and taking, I think, unless I misunderstood. But, when you get into the physics of it, all of us, and we learned this in biogeometry and other levels of radiesthesia, we're toroidal fields. And a toroidal field has to be perfectly balanced, the part up here and down here, and there's an equator in between. And if we're askew, if we're not equally grounded as well as equally, head in the heavens there, then you have problems. You can also be skewed, to east, west. And we also know how to translate that into what that means to our biology, to our psyche. So, the greatest scientist, or one of them, I think, that ever lived was Walter Russell. And he, explained beautifully how the universe is a give situation. So in order for our toroidal fields, the toroidal field of our realm, which we call the earth, of each of our individual bodies as a composite of other many toroidal fields that we call cells, if we are thinking about giving and not into a survival, fearful, mechanistic mode of belief system, it's just a natural tendency to give. And then through our experience, we realize the more we give, the more we get. And when people get into that mode, then I can take my little instruments and things and measure people's toroidal fields, and they become more and more balanced, just equal above and below. And there's just perfect moment by moment exchange of energy that creates symmetry, and everything in your life works out beautifully. And those are the things that have been taken out of science, including the whole concept that there's no such thing as an ether, which is the living fabric that all of us as artistic souls are supposed to be creating from in the first place. There's no such thing as, space or voids. It's all living intelligence. We are part of it, and we are here to learn how to manipulate that to our advantage and to the advantage of all of life around us. It's really that simple.
Matt, before we went live, you were talking about education, homeschooling, and all this stuff. To me, this is the most important education, letting our children be infused with balance and harmonious energies, especially the first 7 years of their life, so that they stabilize and understand, like, how does the soul precipitate into the physical, and how to keep the energy field in this like balance and harmonious state. And then everything else on the 3D level can arise in a healthy, balanced way out of that. So that we are often so worried about achievement in, like, are they like catching up to the right level with the math, with the reading, with the writing? It's like all of that unfolds naturally if their energy state is in balance and harmony first. And so the good news is that if they spend a lot of time in nature, if they spend time around people like Bear or Matt, like they have that example of what a balanced energy field looks like and feels like, and then they will lock into resonance with that. To me, that's the most important thing. And so a lot of people think, well, but that's such a good school. Academically, they're so great. It's like, but what is the energy field of the classroom and the energy fields of the teachers? It's not just that, oh, this teacher is great, they like won an award, they have these pieces of paper on the wall, and they're academically rigorous, but are they doing it with a balanced and stable energy field that you want your children to impregnate, into their field, right? And so with education, I think if you want to talk about that for a second, I think that we're at a time now where the whole house of cards is falling down, and it can be dizzying and confusing. And we have the opportunity to take a full step back and ask ourselves, what is it to be a human? What is the nature of this reality? That's how fundamental we have to go back before we start to say, how can we fix the education system? We have to understand how this reality even works better, so that we can ask the question, therefore, what does it take to be an awesome, vibrant, joyful, healthy, and fulfilled human, right? And then out of that inquiry, it becomes very clear that what are all the skills or intelligences that one needs to cultivate to create a good life. My friend David Rodriguez was a guest speaker at my education conference, and he says, education is what you do to yourself to create a good life. School is what somebody else out there does to you based on their ideas and agendas. And sometimes it's possible their ideas and agenda matches up with what you believe you need to create a good life, but a lot of times not. Right? So we are confused. Like, education is such a big thing right now for us to clean up and revamp because of our messed up education journeys. All of this other stuff is messed up. Our entire worldview has been misprogrammed. So it's time to come back to the drawing board and look at how do we cultivate not just our IQ and EQ, but our energy intelligence, intuitive intelligence, spiritual intelligence. How do we learn about things like the right use of power and so many things that are unfolding in the world for us to get really clear. Wow, how do we live in communities that honors everybody's individuality and honors individual needs and find a higher win-win, right use of finance, right use of sexual energy, right use of all the resources of this earth, connect with nature's wisdom, connect with cosmic wisdom, learning all those skills, like we were talking about the telepathy and the intuition and all this stuff, learning about cosmic wisdom, cosmology, so many things. And just like the basics of the trivium method of learning to bring that back into a common understanding of how a human learns. There's so many things, and it can be very overwhelming right now because everyone's like, I don't even know how to start. But it's just like what you were talking about, Matt, about an elite athlete. When somebody's just trying to get fit and they see you do all your cool tricks, it can seem like, oh my God, that seems daunting and overwhelming. But the good news is that there's a lot of amazing resources available right now. And we have this opportunity to take a step back and reinvent the whole thing and build it from the ground up in the most beautiful and magical way. And Matt, or when we started in the beginning, you said, well, what tips do you have? What tips do you have for my daughter? Because I love her. I want to cultivate all these things. And the really good news is that these children are coming in with an encoding of a wisdom. Like, they already know what they need. And it's actually way easier than we think, because we can take a step back and say, hey, we've got a full buffet here. The sky's the limit, all these different options. What is the adventure that you want to create in this life, little one? And just let them take the lead.
That's beautiful. Well, it seems like I like the idea that it all needs to come down. I remember being about 18 and starting to read all these books on different things. And I realized I need to unlearn everything that I learned, that the institution has kind of boxed my mind. And so we need to reassess what we're doing. And what's happening is we're giving the government or institutions our children, and we don't know what that agenda is. And now when you pay attention to it, you realize how messed up it's actually getting. So it's a beautiful gift for us. And so now we're going to rethink everything, start testing some new ideas, and we're going to get total different results with our kids. And that's going to really help us synergize. And just like coherence, when there's one good idea, it's gonna spread like wildfire, whether it comes to Norway, Canada, US. We see that result and you go, that is the truth. It dings with a resonance. It's common sense. And then when we can start following these new protocols, because it's going to be a lot easier to engineer powerful kids than it is to convince somebody who's already been indoctrinated that they've been fooled and they need to rethink things. Like, what do you mean? I paid 50 grand for this education. I'm not rethinking anything. The problem is that you're a dummy and you didn't go to the school that I went to. Right? It's like, well, that's not the case, and even I remember doing this whole, scenario we're in with germ theory versus terrain theory. One thing made way more sense. It's like, well, you're not a doctor. I was like, no, but I interviewed a lot of doctors and one sounds much more true. It makes much more logical sense that anybody should be able to come to that same conclusion. That's why there's no public debates. So once we have that truth, we can start building on that fundamentally, and that's the opportunity we have. So education is probably the most paramount. And then we go in from my idea would be the media and these mental nutriments and these TV shows and kids and what they're instilling and all this nonsense. And it's become predatory AI, and it's the move back towards nature, to what's harmonious and what's good and what's natural. And when we do that, we're going to flourish. And we have to make that conscious choice, because it's easier to veg out. And what the controllers have kind of designed is the movie Wall-E. you know, when we're in that seat. If you guys ever seen that, you're in a chair and then you get your extra large soda and it goes right in your mouth and you get rolled over into your bed. Everything is so comfortable and easy and accessible, and there's no efforting. You know, it's not harmonious, and we're being kind of lured into a fake system, into something that's unnatural, an unnatural way of being, because it's comfortable. And I remember describing this in detail, and someone goes, yeah, that's or it was maybe as a show I was watching, but they go, yeah, you're describing drowning, where all of a sudden you're about to die and it just becomes peaceful and easy, and you know what I mean, and all the body shuts down and you just kind of surrender. You know, that's kind of what we're moving towards, where, you know, our evolution sometimes takes effort and discomfort, and there's peace, but you know, you guys know this by being athletes, there's a discomfort part of it. And my martial arts background allowed me to stay, I was way into the woo-woo, and I still am, and I get as weird as it can be, but the martial arts side gives me a different filter, because if it's just going to be only an FES all day, no athlete has ever gotten a high level of just being, I'm only going to do what I want and everything is hunky-dory always. Is no, how do you deal with challenges and setbacks and push yourself and explore? It's like this balance of both worlds that we need to integrate. So Bear, do you have any thoughts on, you know, education and how we move forward in that realm, or any other industries you see that, you know, could really use an upgrade?
Well, I'd say first of all, and I think a lot of this is coming into, you know, full view right now with many people, is that there's no need for government. There really isn't. And now I know that sounds radical to some people. How the heck would we deal without government? But, and it sounds like, well, that's anarchy, but anarchy is not chaos. Governments create chaos. Anarchy is natural law. And if you look historically, governments are responsible for the vast majority of all death, suffering, and every atrocious thing that, you know, has happened historically. So we need to go back to what are, you know, I'll relate this to the U.S. The U.S., you know, the founding fathers, there were some good folks there. They weren't all white supremacist, you know, horrible people like, you know, like the communists are trying to convince us right now. They spoke on this very often, and they said, well, if you have government every 7 years, as Thomas Jefferson, what you're going to have to do is probably go in and throw the bums out, and it's probably going to take some bloodshed. So my question is, why the heck do we allow something to form and evolve that we know is just going to torture us to the point where we have to go in and shed blood to get rid of in the first place? Right now, we're creating a little prototype here, just a little microcosm of what we feel could be. People are congregating. We're growing things. We're making things out of what we grow. There's people, you know, in the area that have other skills, and we're all coming together. If, you know, we've actually had situations like this locally where I live. If there's something that happens to the road or a bridge, we all pitch in, you know, some money and effort and everything, and we fix it ourselves. And it happens way quicker. It does it, you know, it happens in the way we want it. We don't have to go sit in on, you know, some meeting with bureaucrats where they're going to procrastinate and raise our taxes. And so, for God's sake, people, you know, I think David Icke says it best. You know, it's time for humanity to get up off of their knees. You know, it's time for us to govern ourselves, and it's time for us to control our own destiny. We don't need anybody else to do that for us. And I think as soon as people, unfortunately, suffer a little bit more pain here, and that's what's coming right now, and that's not to end us on a somber note. It's, you know, it's very positive and everything in alignment with what we're saying. Entering into this winter and the following year, we're going to see a lot of stuff go down, and people have already made their choice. Some people have chosen to get certain medical procedures. A lot of those people are not going to make it. They will not. And the evidence is already in. There are the real things that are happening in the economic system. So some of us have been preparing for a long time, and you know, that's not to say better or worse, but it doesn't happen overnight. So I think my final word would be a little cautionary note to folks. It's not time to ride the fence. In fact, you are not going to be allowed to ride the fence. You're going to have to make a choice. And some of us who have made that choice a long time ago, God bless you. You know, we are here to support you, to do anything we can within our power to help on any level. But if you try to encroach in our affairs, you know, then that's where the old martial arts comes in, you know, where, I did full contact fighting for many years. And, you know, the sensei is always saying, loose tight, you know, you just got to be kind of relaxed and loosey goosey and peripheral vision. And, you know, but then as soon as something happens, you know, you're there with laser precision and you don't mess around. So that's a mastery that we're all learning. That's why martial arts have great practical application. And that's why outer experiences now are giving that kind of training to us all, whether we like it or not. That's what we signed up for, believe it or not. And so we're entering into the best of times, but it's not time for the meek of heart at all either.
Go ahead, Dr. E. Do you want to give us some?
Well, I just have so much gratitude. Every time I talk with Dr. Bear, I feel like, oh, I hope I'm as badass and awesome as him in 30 or 40 years. You know, like I often feel like when I talk with Dr. Bear, that it's like me having the beautiful opportunity to time travel in the future. Like I'm on this same path. And if I could have a few more decades of extra experience and wisdom, like, oh, wow, I do get to time travel. I just love and treasure every opportunity to chat with both of you, because it just feels like soul family reunion. Final words of wisdom. I don't know. I just want to tell you guys, you're doing great. You know, so many of us that are on a journey of personal and spiritual growth, we're always like, oh, what more could I be doing? It's like, relax, come back to your center. It's simultaneously so intense out there, and actually it's very simple. That all this stuff is forcing us to hold our center and to tune in deeply, because if you listen to the external experts out there, right? So many of us have followed authors and speakers and coaches and inspirational leaders, and then they all got psyop too. So there's that's we're having to clean up all the things in our lives that is just not reliable and not sustainable. Well, what is true and sustainable is going deeply within, doing your inner work, and then being part of the solution. The whole old system is totally, the house of cards is already falling, you know? So like, let's not cry over the sinking ship already. You know, we really do need all hands on deck right now with building the new solutions. The good news is, in contrast, the new solutions are so rich, so beautiful, so soulful when you're in communities with people like Matt and Dr. Bear and Mike Winner. I love him so much. If he's listening right now, shout out to Mike Winner. You know, like people in this kind of community, they enrich your soul. They inspire you to keep going. People that have done their inner work, and this magic and synchronicity and almost telepathic kind of collaboration that's possible. When you've tasted it, you would never want to go back to the old paradigm. The same with our children when we're with this homeschooling and unschooling. Once you've stepped into this life, you're like, I can't believe I bought into that schooly paradigm. I can't believe I didn't exit that old paradigm sooner. So it's a really beautiful time to be alive right now, with all the transformation and the possibility of reinventing everything. And I believe those of us that are listening to this podcast, we came here for this, to be part of the solution. And I want to thank you guys and honor you so much for your beauty, your courage, and your badassery. And it's a big honor to share this hour with you.
Oh, well, I appreciate you guys both very much. And Dr. E, when you're chatting there, it kind of made me think of the analogy when someone who's, you know, really like ill, maybe they're really overweight or they get really sick, they make this decision. Those who do it, and they make this decision, say, I'm never going to do that again, and they change their life, and it becomes their way of being. And it takes this great amount of contrast or pain, and it feels like many of these people are going to get more and more and more pain, and there's going to be a certain percentage to say, no more, I'm totally going to, and they don't look back. You know, they don't look back. And that's a very powerful thing to shift. It's hard to make people do it when everything is cozy and good. But then there comes a point where it's one thing after another, they make that decision and they're open to this new way of being. And that's going to be the force that we all use to respond to what's going on. And just to, remind everybody, if it is frightening out there, we have all the capabilities. If we're aware of what's going on and we see it and it feels like you're alone and no one's listening, that powerful force is coming. You know what I mean? It will happen, because the more you push and push and push, it's just the same thing in martial arts. If you don't give that person, or you'll trap a little, I don't know, Wolverine. If you don't give him an exit, eventually you're going to get smoked. You know what I mean? Then alone 1,000 Wolverines, they're just asked to be left to go, to live harmoniously in alignment with nature, and nature is cooperative with that too. You have nature, God, the universe on that side of life, because life doesn't go around trying to encroach on everything else or parasite on everything else. It wants to be cooperative, and we're having this opportunity to respond as a humanity, which I think is necessary. It's the old paradigm, if you understood it, which you guys probably did, and I know Dr. Bear has a lot of interesting stories about that old world system. There was a lot of stuff that needed to be repaired, and this is now affecting everyone on the planet, so that when we make this new decision as a humanity, we can clean up all the other stuff and all those other hidden places that we didn't want to look. And we can do it quickly as a unit, saying, hey, everybody see this? This can't be. What's the solution? Boom. And we just work together cohesively. So I just appreciate you both for all your work and everything that you guys do. Hopefully we'll do lots more of these. I always feel better chatting to you. And sometimes I send the emails like, I'm super depressed. I need to talk to you guys. It's too intense over here. So I love you both. I appreciate you. And I invite everyone to check out both of your work and to follow you guys and just stay connected. So thanks so much. And we'll do this again.
Thanks, Matt. Love you guys a lot. This was fun.
Thank you.
Love you too. See you guys. See you, everyone.